A new petition needs 1 million signatures to stop publishers killing games. This initiative calls to require publishers that sell or license video games to consumers in the European Union or related features and assets sold for video games they operate to leave said video games in a functional, playable state. Specifically, the initiative seeks to prevent the remote disabling of video games by the publishers before providing reasonable means to continue functioning of said video games without the involvement from the side of the publisher. The initiative does not seek to acquire ownership of said video games, associated intellectual rights, or monetization rights. Neither does it expect the publisher to provide resources for the said video game once they discontinue it, while leaving it in a reasonably functional, playable state. Now, here's the thing. I do think that this is an important change in how video games are delivered. So much is delivered to us digitally. So much of us is delivered in a way that where it's supposed to be always online. And we're seeing instances where these games are unceremoniously wiped from the internet. You have The Crew recently was removed. I think there's a difference between being able to purchase the Forza games, which you can still buy the physical disc of, but what's that going to look like for Xbox when they go all digital? Like if Hellblade 2 is just removed and you have no way to ever purchase that game again, that game it's just gone. And I think there's a big realization right now that we are losing access to games that we have purchased, and people are upset about that. I think this is an important law. I do hope that something happens with it, because I think there's no reason that a game like The Crew that people purchased could not still be accessible. There's a way that you can just turn off the always online requirement and just let people continue to own that game. That was a good game by all measure. And like, what's going to happen when something like Destiny eventually goes offline? I think there's instances where it's easier. I think Destiny would be harder to make an offline version because of the server infrastructure, or like World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft's going to die someday. Like, I don't know if like even WoW Classic is struggling to keep a player base. Let's continue on reading. Video games have grown into an industry with billions of customers worth hundreds of billions of euros. During this time, a specific business practice in the industry has been slowly emerging that is not only an assault on basic consumer rights, but is destroying the medium itself. An increasing number of publishers are selling video games that are required to connect through the internet to the game publisher or phone home to function. While this is not a problem in itself, when support ends for these types of games, very often publishers simply sever the connection necessary for the game to function, proceed to destroy all working copies of the game, and implement extensive measures to prevent the customer from repairing the game in any way. This practice is effectively robbing customers of their purchases and makes restoration impossible. Besides being an affront on consumer rights, video games themselves are unique creative works like film or music and cannot simply be substituted with another. By destroying them, it represents a creative loss for everyone involved and erases history in ways not possible in other mediums. I think that the EU is absolutely going to step in and make an effective change to the entire video game industry in this respect. I think it's insane that a game like The Crew, which could absolutely be played offline, is simply just deleted from the internet. Just delete it. You can't access it anymore. You can't do anything. There are different cases, like with an MMO or shared world shooter or something like that, where I don't know if it would be as easy for them to make an offline version playable, but there's a little bit of a problem here. There's requirements often that software needs to at one time initiate an online connection to ensure that you're not like pirating copies of the physical media, right? Inversely though, there's nothing to protect the consumer when that goes offline. So you spend $60 on a game and then they can just delete it if they choose to. And I do think that the government will look at this at some point, and they are going to have to make a decision about whether or not this is a reasonable thing to do for consumers. The practice is effectively robbing consumers of their purchases and makes restoration impossible. Besides being an affront to consumer rights, video games themselves are unique creative works. Covered off on that. Existing laws and consumer agencies are ill prepared to protect consumers against this practice. The ability for a company to destroy an item has already sold to the consumer long after the fact is not something that normally occurs in other industries. With license agreements required to simply run the game, many existing consumer protections are circumvented. This practice challenges the concept of ownership itself, where the customer is left with nothing after buying a game. I think this is like a really, really good petition. If you want to sign this petition, and I'll link to it, only do it if you're in the EU. Do not do it if you're in America. Only do it if it's applicable to your specific region of the world. Because if you just go sign it and you're not affected or applicable in this situation, you could actually do more damage to the potential of this actually getting in front of Congress. But if you agree with what they're saying, and personally, I do think there need to be more consumer protections. This is not an Apple that could go bad after a certain amount of time. This is a video game. So I do think that it's a really interesting topic to be brought up. Bass Digi says, Destin is a little childish. I'm reading an EU law that is potentially being passed in the legislation. And your reaction is that I'm childish because I advocate for consumer rights. Okay. You have your take, I guess. Existing law and consumer agencies. We talked about that one. We wish to invoke Article 17, Part 1, I think that means part, I actually don't know what that symbol means, of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. No one may be deprived of his or her possessions except in the public interest and in the cases and under the conditions provided for by law, subject to fair compensation, being paid in good time for their loss. This practice deprives European citizens of their property by making it so they lose access to their product an indeterminate/arbitrary amount of time after the point of sale. We wish to see this remedied at the core of this initiative. We also invoke Title XV, that is 15, of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union and the following TFEU articles as our justification for and the Union's imperative to respond to the initiative. Article 169 has an obligation to promote the interests of consumers and to ensure a high level of consumer protection to protect the health, safety, and economic interests of consumers. We believe this practice infringes upon or requires correction to be commensurate with the EU's obligation. The actions taken in response to this initiative must supersede and end user license agreements associated with video games. I think there's something that's going to happen with this one. I have to imagine that the idea of protecting consumer rights is very, very big within the world, especially in the EU. Do you remember that when the whole Activision thing was happening, who almost got the whole thing shut down? The EU. Was it the EU or the UK? Well, anyway, point being, this is a territory where they take these things very seriously, where consumer protections are very, very important. So the fact that this is being presented could give them a little bit trouble. And this could have sweeping implications for the US. And it was both, yes. I believe the EU passed it, but the UK didn't, if I remember correctly. But anyway, it was close at both places. It was like never sweeping. Consumer protection requirements shall be taken into account in defending and implementing other union policies and activities. Given that this practice extends across member states and beyond the EU, the union's actions regarding this practice ought to keep consumer protections in mind. The actions taken in response to this initiative must supersede any end user license agreements associated with video games. Basically, they're saying consumers first, Like, yeah, you can put your EULA in there, but like you got to at least say that we're going to have the product for 5 years or something. The commission and its proposals envisaged in paragraph 1 concerning health, safety, environmental protection, and consumer protection will take as a base a high level of protection within their respective powers. The European Parliament and the Council will also seek to achieve this objective. This practice undermines the high level of consumer protection that the Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council takes as the basis of law in the Union, and their objectives of establishing and maintaining the functioning of an internal market as described in one of this article in Article 26. I think if this gets enough attention, I do think that this could be passed. Number of statements of support collected. So they have a lot of support from Austria and Belgium and Bulgaria. Total number of signatories, 125K. So they need 1 million is what the original report said. And this was just registered. I have no idea how to read these dates. Collection start date 7/31. So it just started and they have 125K. I think that this has a chance of making it further than we thought. And I do think it could happen. Deadline is 7/1/2025. So they have a year. Anyway, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. If you are not subscribed yet, hit that like button if you are already subscribed. Thank you so much to the members for supporting. And a big thank you to the members. If you want to become a member, you can click that join button right down there. I think I'm going to sign off for the day. I greatly appreciate y'all watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you for the next one. We took a lot of twists and turns today, but I greatly appreciate you watching. Bye for now, everybody, and I'll see you for the next one soon.